Hey, this is René, and in this video I want to start a small series on mql5, mql5 programming, which shall be suitable for beginners also. So make sure to watch the whole series to learn different aspects of mql5 programming. Each of the videos will have a topic, which you can see here. This is the plan that I made for this series. So you will see that we will first of all create a CCI expert advisor with ASL and a take profit in this video. Then we will add a moving average filter on a higher time frame or just a different time frame. We will add a partial closing of open positions and a break-even stop. And in the end, we will have a look at the whole program and do some backtesting and maybe optimization. So make sure to follow all the videos, and even if you do not like or work with a CCI indicator, it does not really matter, because you can apply all these things to any other indicator. So this is like a formula which you can use to implement these things, and every video on its own is teaching you a mechanism that you can include in pretty much every mql5 program. So if you like the content on this channel, if you want to support the channel, make sure to like every video of the series and also subscribe so you do not miss any part of the series. So we will start in this video by creating a CCI expert advisor with a fixed SL and take profit. So in the mql5, you can see on the left side in the navigator, if you do not see it, you can click on View Navigator. There you will find indicators, and if you open it and click on examples, you can find the CCI indicator here, and you can apply it to a chart by simply dragging and dropping it onto this chart. And you can see there are two inputs. The first one is the value, the second one is the applied price, and then we have colors, levels and stuff like that, but this doesn't really influence the way the CCI is calculated. So most important for us is the inputs parameter and the applied to parameter, and these are the things that we will have to take care of in our expert advisor. And if you attach the CCI to a chart, you will see that it is built like this. It is a so-called oscillator, and it works with overbought and oversold markets. So the general idea is to watch out for situations where the CCI is at a very low point like this, and this would be a buy signal. Or where the CCI is at a really high level, like here, for example, or here, and this is considered to be a sell signal. But as I already said, it does not really matter if these signals are good or bad. You can still watch this tutorial and you can always adjust the program later on, or even exchange this indicator completely. So learning to program mql5 programs is all about learning the basics. It is not about finding the one indicator, the one strategy that will make you rich really quick, but it is about learning the basics. And this is what we will do now. So if we want to write a program, we have to open the MetaQuartz language editor. You can do so by clicking on IDE or Tools and then MetaQuartz language editor. Then this will open the MetaQuartz language editor. On the left side, you see the navigator. If you do not see it, again, click on View Navigator. Then you can click on New and create an expert advisor template. We will call this program CCI system, but you can choose whatever name you like. You could name it Peter or David. It doesn't really matter. This is just the name. It has absolutely no effect on the functionality. Then you click on Next, Next, and Finish. And then you can see it creates a skeleton for any basic indicator pretty much. And we will simply erase the first 11 lines here, because these lines are only comments or properties. Comments are just information for the programmer, and properties are information for the user, or in this case, these properties are just to show some information to the user of the program, and they do not affect the functionality in any way. What we have left here, we have three functions left, the onInit, the onDinit, and the onTick function. These three functions, they all have a purpose. For example, we can add some print statements here. So you can see onInit, onDinit, I added these print statements, and what a print statement does, it just prints a information in the expert's journal. So the moment we prepare a program like this and click on compile, a executable file will be opened, will be created. So if you right-click CCI system up here and click on open containing folder, you will see there is this CCI system.mq5 file. This is the file that we have opened in the meta quotes language editor, and above this file there is this ex5 file. And if I delete it and if I click on compile again, you will see that it is created again. So whenever you click on compile in this .mq5 file here, it automatically creates the executable file. And once you did this, you will find the executable here in the navigator in the MetaTrader 5. So you can see I now have access to the CCI system, and I can drag and drop it to any chart. If I click on OK, you will see in the experts journal in the toolbox. If you do not see the toolbox, click on View Toolbox. There you can see in the Experts tab here, you can see onInit, because the onInit function is called whenever the program is activated. So if I now remove the program, you can see the onDinit function is called, because the program was removed from the chart. So we can do this again. Whenever I activate the program, it calls the onInit. Whenever the program is deinitialized, like when I remove it from the chart, the onDinit function is called. And if I, for example, change the time frame, it first of all calls the onDinit function on the old time frame. You can see it here on the 1 hour chart, and then on the 30-minute chart, it will initialize the program again. So this is another event that calls the onDinit and then the onInit function. And yeah. Why does this happen? This happens because these functions are so-called system functions, and they are even more. They are event handler functions. And there are some of these event handler functions. You can look them up in the documentation. If you click inside of any of these function names and click F1 on your keyboard, it should open the mql5 reference. If it does not open the reference, you can click on Help mql5 reference. And there you can read about everything that is important for MetaTrader programming. And you can see this is the onInit function, but we also have an entry for the event handling functions. So if you scroll all to the bottom, you can see event handling functions as a link here. And here you can see all the event handling functions like the onInit, the onDinit, or the onTick. And as I said, there are even more. You can read about all of them here in the documentation. But for us, first of all, we only need these three. So the onInit is called whenever the program is initialized. And by called, it means that this function is executed. So the MetaTrader calls the onInit function of any expert advisor attached to this chart. And then everything that is inside of the body of this onInit function, which is in between of these curly brackets, will be executed. So if we add a print statement here, it will be executed once the onInit function is called. Same for the onInit, it also has a body which is in between of these curly brackets here, and it is executed once the program is deinitialized. There is also a parameter, but yeah, let's not talk about this now because it doesn't really matter for a program. Then as a third function, we have the onTick function, and we can also add a onTick print statement here. So if we compile it and wait for the execution of this onTick function, we will not see it, because when I record this video, it is a Saturday, so there is no tick in the chart. But we can simulate this using the strategy tester. So if you click on View Strategy Tester, or simply press Ctrl and R on your keyboard, this will open the strategy tester. And there you can, for example, visualize a backtest. So if you do this, you can search for an expert here, and we will search for CCI system, of course. Then you can make you can choose some settings to test the program. For us, it doesn't really matter because the program does nothing but printing this statement in the onTick function. But what you can see here is now this will simulate the expert advisor on historical data. So there's a little control mechanism here to speed up or slow down the test. I will slow it down so you can see whenever there's a tick in the market, so when there's a price movement, you will see that the onTick function is executed and it will print onTick down here in the journal. So this is why the onTick function is in most of the programs the most important function, because this is where you want to have your trading logic inside, because this function is called with every single tick. And this is why we'll put our the biggest part of our programming logic inside of this onTick function. But enough talking about the basics. We will now go ahead and receive the CCI values. So whenever you want to have or you want to receive data from an indicator, you need a so-called handle in the MetaTrader 5. So we can create a handle for this CCI indicator. And we do this at the very top of our program outside of any function body. And we can declare this handle, which is pretty much just a variable. And a variable can be declared using the variable data type and writing it in front of the variable name, and then ending the line with a semicolon. And what this does is it creates an integer variable. And an integer variable is pretty much just a space in the memory of your PC where you can store values like this. So it can be any number to a certain size that does not have a decimal point. So this would not be an integer. No integer. Integer. This is not a integer value, but this is a integer value. So you can see any number without a decimal point pretty much can be a integer, and even negative numbers. So this would also be a integer. So why do we create this integer variable? This integer variable, as I said, it is just a space in the memory, and we can now use this space in the memory to store values at this specific position in the memory. And the name is just important, so we can tell the PC what specific value we want to work with. So the name is pretty much just important for the programmer. So we have a way to access this variable. So what we can do here is we can say we want to use this variable, which we declared up here, and we want to store a value inside of it. So we can use this equal sign and now give it a value like 23, for example. So if we compile this, this is working. And if you erase this line here, it is not working because the name or the variable is not known. So it is important that before you try to put some value inside of a variable, you have to declare it. So you have to tell the PC what data type pretty much will be stored inside of this variable. This is important for your memory management because the PC has to know how much space it has to reserve for this specific variable. But like this, it is working. And for example, I can also print this handle CCI now. So if we go back to our program here, you can see it will now print 23 because this is the value stored inside of this handle CCI variable. But we of course do not want to store any number inside here, but we want to store the handle pretty much of this CCI indicator. So what we can do here is we can choose or we can call the iCCI function. And this is a indicator function. So if you open the reference again, by clicking F1 here, you can search for the iCCI function. And you can see that this function returns the handle of the commodity channel index, which is the CCI indicator, and it will, pretty much return the value, and we can then store it inside of our handle CCI variable. So here in this light yellow, I will call it, window, you can see the function definition, the signature. You can call this is the signature of the function. So what we can see here is, first of all, the return value. So once this function is called, it is then processed in the background pretty much, and it will return a value. And the return value is always the first data type before the name of the function. So this will return an integer value, and this is why we are allowed to store the return value inside of this handle CCI variable, because it is also of type integer. And this iCCI function, it has 4 parameters. What does this mean? This means that we cannot call this function like this, because now it says there is a wrong parameter count. And the parameters always have to be provided in the parentheses of this function. So if you open the parentheses, you can already see a preview of the requested parameters. So what we have to provide here is a symbol, a time frame, a period, and a applied price. And if you remember, these are exactly the information or the settings that we can choose for our CCI indicator. So at the beginning of this video, we talked about the inputs, which is the period, and the applied to price. And these are the parameters that are now requested. So here you can see the applied price and the MA periods are requested. And before that, we also have to provide the symbol and the time frame, because the program has to know for what symbol and for what time frame we want to calculate this CCI indicator. So for the symbol, we will in most cases just use underscore symbol. This is, as you can read in the documentation, a system variable which always holds the name of the symbol of the current chart. So if we attach this program to the US dollar Japanese yen chart, the underscore symbol variable will automatically hold the value USD Japanese yen. And this is a string value. A string value is a data type just like a integer data type pretty much, but a string value, string like this, can hold text values like USD Japanese yen. So this would be a valid declaration and initialization of a string type variable. So this is why we can use this underscore symbol variable. And you can of course always print things like this. For example, if we print underscore symbol, you can see that I did not lie to you, and it will print USD Japanese yen. So if you have a question about any value or what value is stored inside of a variable, just print it, and it will show you the value inside of it. So as a second parameter, we have to provide the time frame. And I would always recommend to make this a variable which can be changed by the user of the program. So you can just copy this line, please. And let me do it like this. And we can print the time frame here. Okay, so these were several steps that I did in a single line. So we, first of all, created here a new variable. And this variable is not of type integer or string, but of type enum timeframes. And in the documentation, you can see this is a enumeration. So it can hold pretty much any of these values that are under ID. And for example, I chose the first ID, which is period current, and it will stand for the current time frame. But you can also choose the 1 minute, the 2 minute, the 3 minute, and time frame. And you can store it inside of a enum timeframes variable. Then this time frame is just the name of the variable. And then there is one important modifier in front of this enum timeframes data type, and this is input. So if we compile this, I will show you what this input does. So if we double click the CCI system here, you can see we now have this inputs tab here available. And you can see there is the time frame variable. And I, as a user, am allowed to change the value. So for example, if I change it to 1 hour, you will see the message will now print the amount of seconds, I think, in a complete hour. So if we do it for the 1 minute, it should now print 1. Oh no, so it is it? Yeah, it is just a identifier. So you can see whatever value I choose here, there's a different message printed. And this is because all of these values stand for a specific time frame. And it doesn't really make sense. I mean, it makes sense for the minutes because 1 is the identifier for the 1 minute, 5 for the 5 minute. But for the hours, it is not like 1 hour is 60 because it has 60 minutes. So there's a difference. But this is not really important for us, but the PC or the MetaTrader will know that this stands for 1 hour, and this stands for 2 hours, and this stands for 4 hours. So this is just a enumeration that the PC will understand. And what we can do here is, as a second parameter for our iCCI function, we can now provide this iTimeframe variable, because you can see the value that is requested is a value of type enum timeframes. So this is this is really important that you provide a enum timeframes value like we did here. And then there's just the period and the applied price following, and these are the parameters that I already showed you. And I would also suggest to create a input for this, like CCI periods and CCI applied price. CCI applied price, and the default should be price typical, and maybe we can even say CCI time frame. And you can see here, this is again a enum applied price enumeration, and in the documentation you can read about this. So you can see there are several IDs. It is completely the same as with the enum timeframes. There are some predefined IDs that you can choose from and store inside of a variable of type enum applied price. So we can now go ahead and choose the CCI periods and the CCI applied price here. And of course, we have to change the name of this timeframe variable because I added this CCI. If we compile this, we can see now if we print the handle, you will see this is pretty much just any integer number. So the handle is just some number in the background of your MetaTrader 5. But the MetaTrader will know for every number what exact indicator you stored for this handle ID pretty much. So the handle is just a way of saying the PC what exact indicator you want to calculate. And this is why we can now use this handle in the onTick function typically to use the copy buffer function. And the copy buffer function, it will take any indicator handle, as you can see here, and then you can choose a buffer number, and the buffer number is just a for example, if you look in the data window here on the left side, and if I move my cursor over the CCI indicator, you can see there is a value changing, and this is the buffer of this indicator. There are some indicators that have 2 or 3 buffers, but in this case, the CCI only has 1 buffer, so this buffer will have the ID 0. Because the counting of buffers typically starts at 0. Then we have a starting position, which means for what bar do we want to have the CCI value. And here we can start, for example, with at the last bar, and we have a count of 1. And then as a last parameter, we have to provide an array where we store the values inside. So these were several steps or things that I did here. But let us start at the beginning here. First of all, we create a double array. A double array is pretty much just a a amount of double variables. If you're asking yourself what a double variable is, a double variable is any number that holds a decimal point like this. So this would be a double value because there is a decimal point and we can store it inside of a double variable. So we choose a double data type because we want to have CCI values, and as you can see in the data window, they typically have a decimal point. So we have to use a double place in the memory pretty much of the PC to store the values inside. And what we need is, because this copy buffer function can also receive multiple values from an indicator, we need an array. So we do not need just one value, but we need an array. And an array is pretty much just a chain of values of the same type inside of your memory. So for example, we can say that we want to store multiple values inside of this array. So this would work. We can say, for example, we want to store 2 values inside of this array. And this would not work if we have a simple double variable. So this is why we have to use an array, because we can receive multiple values using the copy buffer function. And the amount of values that we want to receive is indicated by this count parameter here. So for example, if we call the function like this, we now say to the PC pretty much that we want to receive values from this specific CCI indicator. And we want to start receiving these values from the buffer with the ID 0, which is the only buffer of this CCI indicator, and then we want to start at position 1, and this means that we start at the last bar pretty much. So not the current bar, but the previous bar, because the current bar has index 0, this is index 1, this is index 2, this is index 3, and. And by saying that we want to start at index 1, we will then receive the value starting at this candle, and then we will have the next parameter, which is the count parameter, where we define how many bars we want to store inside of our array. So if the count is 1, we only store the value of this bar, so the CCI value of this bar inside of this array. But if we have 2, we will also store this value inside of the array. And this is what we did here. So we have a count of 2, which is this parameter value, and we will store 2 values inside of our array. And this is why we can, for example, use a simple comment which will print the CCI values inside of the chart. So we can say, for example, we want to print the CCI value at index 0. CCI at index 0. And we will also print the CCI value at index 1. Like this. So if you just, let me make this a little bit bigger so it is easier to read for you. So if you just copy these 2 lines here, and make sure to copy everything like I wrote it here. So comment is a function, which is again, of course, a system function that we can use straight ahead. And in the parentheses here, we can provide an undefined amount of parameters, dividing them by a comma. So there you can provide a combination of texts and values, and they will be shown in the upper left corner of your chart. And this \n thus just means that we want to go inside of a new line. And here these are texts because they are in quotation marks. And these are values from our CCI double array here. So if we do it like this, and if we run the program in the tester, or maybe we do not need the tester, but we can just go to the onInit function and call the onTick function here. So this means it will be executed when the program is started. So we can use it without using the tester. And what we can see here now is this program will print in the upper left corner the values of the last bar and the bar before this. So you can see this is right now in our CCI array at index 1. Just compare the value in the upper left corner and the value in the data window. So this is stored inside of the array at index 1, and this is stored inside of the array at index 0. And this is because we stored 2 values, or we provided a count of 2 for this copy buffer function, and we started at position 1. So this is why we received the value for this bar and this bar. And these are the only values that we receive. So if we are trying to print the index 2 of this array, oh, and by the way, you can always access a specific index of an array using these squared brackets here. So if we compile this, this will throw a critical error because this array only holds 2 values. And now we are trying to access the 3rd value in this array. So you can see in the expert's journal here, you will receive an error, which is an array out of range. This is because we try to access a index of this array that is not there. So this is a violation pretty much of the memory management of your program. Okay, but this is a great way of receiving indicator values from this CCI indicator, or in fact from any other indicator. So you can copy this mechanism and apply it to the moving average, to the MACD, to the RSI, to the to the Bollinger Bands indicator. So you can see there are functions for so many different indicators, like the SAR, the stochastic, and you can read about all of them in the documentation, of course. So this is just pretty much a blueprint for receiving values from any indicator. Okay, so if I look to the right, I can see that this episode, or this first part of the series, is already too long. So we already took 30 minutes for this task, and it was important for me to explain all the basics and all the knowledge that is behind declaring a variable or creating a handle. So it took me a little bit longer than I expected. So we will cut off this video here right now, and we'll go on with this series in the next video, which I will release in several days. So make sure to subscribe to this channel so you do not miss any of these videos. So as you can see here, you will get in-depth knowledge about mql5 programming. If you like the video, again, press the thumbs up button. And if you want to learn more about mql5 programming, you can always check out the links below this video. There you will find, for example, a complete course on mql5 programming, where I explain basics like this in much more detail. So you will really get a complete understanding about the programming language and the framework. So this is it for now. Hope that you like this video. Hope that you will watch the next one. And yeah, I will see you then. Have a great time. Bye.